Hello everybody, it's Jay Roby. I'm going to be going over a match that was sent to me by one of my subscribers, Baddrumming, and he's playing black in this match, and he thought that I would enjoy it, and I actually did. It's because it's got some things that I think were good to talk about in the video here, and it also has black playing a Sicilian defense against a dual fianchetto setup, which I haven't really encountered very often, and I found it interesting to go through. And it's also got some good points on positional play when you're trading material. Even though material is going to be equal after the trade, the position suffers. So we'll get into the match here. This is Baddrumming playing black, and white opens with a king's pawn, and black gets into the Sicilian. White plays pawn to g3, getting ready to fianchetto, and black continues along the Sicilian defense. White fianchettos, and black brings knight out to c6. Usually when I play the Sicilian, I would play the pawn out here to e5, but the knight going to c6 is fine. Usually in the Sicilian, the knight will end up on c6 or d7, depending on the setup anyway. So from here, white gets ready now to fianchetto the other bishop, which I found interesting. And black plays pawn to e6. A little bit of a passive move, I think. I think a push to e5 might have been a little bit better, but you know, e6 is fine. White now gets into the dual fianchetto setup, which I found interesting. I don't think I've ever actually played against a dual fianchetto setup with a Sicilian defense, so it was interesting to see white use this here. And black plays bishop to d7. Bishop's blocked in a little bit here. The bishop, I think, might be a little bit more useful on e6 and with the pawn on e5. However, in those Sicilian setups, when you get the pawn to e5 and you get your bishops going here on e6 and e7, the d6 pawn can be a liability sometimes, and it's something that black has to look out for. But other than that, like, I mean, it's fine. So we get into white plays pawn to d3, and now black brings knight to f6. White captures with that bishop, and black recaptures with the queen. That is a nice attack on the rook. And white has to block, so pawn to c3. Black plays pawn to b5, and you'll notice here that black's pawn center is improving, and the queen side pressure is going to be building fairly rapidly, because right now white's pawn structure is reliant on the queen and the knight to protect two of its pawns. And I think this is where white makes a crushing mistake. White plays queen to f3. Now, it's offering up a queen trade. Material will be equal, but as we just talked about, these pawns here on d3 and c3 were reliant on protection from the knight and the queen, and now that the queen has moved, the d pawn is hanging. And now I know in some of my matches I've left my d pawn hanging, but I don't ever leave it hanging when I have just a huge presence of enemy pawns that could just rip into my lines. So from this position, black happily trades, and white makes another mistake and captures with the bishop. I think a better move for white would have been to take with the knight here, simply because the knight can influence a lot of squares in the area. And while it can't really protect any of the pawns currently, it could support a push to d4 from the d pawn. But white elects to go with the bishop. I'm not sure why. Maybe the white player was thinking it would get access along to you know, the h5 diagonal. But if we go back to where the bishop was before, it really already had that. Plus, it was impacting the center of the board once this pawn on e4 was either attacked or moved to go into an attack. So I think capturing with the bishop was another mistake from white. And now Baddrumming makes a really good move, gets ready to fianchetto this dark square bishop, which is going to just add just another piece to wreck into this pawn chain. White plays knight to e2, black fianchettos, and now I think you can see that black is on the verge of doing a lot of damage, especially in this pawn island from white. White plays castle, black castles, white develops knight to d2, and now all of a sudden comes this nice move here, pawn to b4. And black is in a great position. White really doesn't have a lot of good options. White can't just take, because if white takes, drops the rook. So what's white going to do? And actually, you know, I'm looking forward to some of your responses on this, because from this position that I'm looking at, there is really not a good move for white. possibly anything that ignores this pawn attack that's coming allows this bishop access to this rook. So it's really tough to say. White plays pawn to d4, but black just takes on c3, attacking the knight immediately. And I think white makes another mistake here and plays knight to c4. I think a better move, once again, it's tough to say. Better move maybe would have been to just realize that you're in a bad position. You have to maybe sack a piece to help the position out. Maybe take with the knight, drop the pawn here, but at least you can get your rook supporting this knight. That's maybe what I would have played in that position, because really white doesn't have anything good going for it at the moment. But instead, white plays knight to c4, so now black has a passed pawn here. Black captures pawn on d4, and white captures pawn on d6. And now this rook is kind of at the mercy of whenever black moves these pawns. So black moves the pawn to d3, attacking the knight. The knight has to move. Knight moves to c1, and black moves a pawn again, attacking the knight. Knight moves to d3, and now black moves pawn to c2, and you can see what kind of problem we're going to get into here. We have the pawns trapping both rooks. All these four squares along white's home rank are covered by the pawns, and this black bishop is attacking the rook. So white plays pawn to e5, which might seem like the most logical move because the knight can support after bishop captures. However, we don't need to use the bishop in this position. You can use the knight. It does open up an attack on the rook. White takes rook, black recaptures. White moves knight to e4. Black takes knight. White knight takes pawn on d2. And now the bishop recaptures the rook to equalize that material that was lost. Promote to queen. Take, and now black is in just a crushing position. And actually, in this point of the match, white resigned. Now let's just go back to where black lost the rook there, because initially when I saw that, I think it is a blunder. I think when you have a position like this as black, there's no need to really give pieces away for free, especially when you have these pawns that are just decimating these rooks. This rook is trapped, this rook is trapped, and really the position is so strong here that giving up a rook isn't really necessary. There's a lot of things that could have been done a little differently. For example, maybe a waiting move, or not even a waiting move, but just to get this rook off that diagonal on this bishop, maybe to b8, and then from there you can unleash the attacks onto e5. It's just an idea, but I think that although this was a blunder, I think positionally black was just so strong that it wouldn't really matter. So, and black's going to get that rook back anyway. Although still it would have been able not to have that happen. But it was a great game, and I think it really highlights some mistakes that white made, and I think people can kind of catch on to how to avoid that in their matches, and that's great. That's what these videos are all about. So if you guys want to send your PGNs to me, I definitely encourage you to do so. I can't guarantee I'm going to make a video on every PGN I receive, but I do prefer if you send them to jrobychess@gmail.com in a PGN format. I don't mind entering the moves into the viewer, but it just saves me some time and would help me get into the video creation process a lot quicker. So take care, and I hope you enjoy the video.